arising therefrom relating to one of the consultants. When the second one refused to any concession, that was Ted Edward, we now suggested that he should go to court and proceed and see the case to its logical conclusion. So we were making efforts to force them to submission, and arising from that effort, we had a 50% concession of the amount meant for one of the consultants, and then on account of that, the Governors Forum were asked now to allow for the payment, to make part payment in his favor. So at the Federal Minister of Justice level, we came in because we were equally conscious of the fact that our mandate is the interest of justice and the public interest, and arising from that public interest, we forced the consultant to compromise relating to the figure that was meant to be fed for them.
Okay, I have this letter, which is addressed to the Honorable Minister of Finance, and it's 29th November 2016, over deductions and Paris and London club loans on the accounts of states and local governments, 1995 to 2022. I just like to read. It's signed by Owele Anayo Rocha Sokorocha, Executive Governor of Imo State. And paragraphs 2 and 3 reads, in the event that it is discovered that the amount paid or disbursed is higher than the amount due, refund deduction should be made directly from the Federation account. Now, the third part, finally, I authorize the deduction of our share of the legal fees relating to this matter and payable to the Nigeria Governors Forum account.
Next letter, perhaps, maybe. This is one of the governors as his then was.
Yes. Yeah. So, deductions. Yes. I don't have the other letter. But my question is, Honorable Minister of Justice, in all of the issues going on, conversations going on, the name of the office of the Honorable Minister of Justice has been, it's frequently been mentioned, and the critics believe that you have an interest, you have a vested interest. That's why you are taking it up and not considering, the very tight economic disposition of both the states, the people of Nigeria, and that is why you are bent on having this money paid to these private consultants rather than looking for a way of, helping the states themselves.
Well, I think that is indeed a clear misconception. It is a clear misconception, again, the background of the fact that first, as I rightly place it before you, that the Office of the Attorney General was a dependent in a case in which the Algons themselves allow themselves to be used as a co-plaintiff against the interest of the federal government and indeed the Office of the Attorney General, Minister of Finance. So the interest of the Office of the Attorney General is not far-fetched, taking into consideration the fact that the Attorney General of the Federation was made a party. The Attorney General of the Federation had taken steps to indeed defend the federal government over it, even when the Governors Forum and indeed even when the Governors Forum and indeed the Algon submitted to consent judgment, the Office of the Attorney General has forced, indeed, arising from the participation of the Office of the Attorney General in the matter, has forced the consultant to submission by way of clear reduction of 50% of the amount in contention. The Office of the Attorney General has equally developed interest against the background of the fact that certain criminal undertones investigations associated with the judgments was indeed ordered by the Office of the Attorney General. So I think the interest of the Attorney General, as far as the protection of the state, protection of the federal government, as far as these claims are concerned, has indeed been established in the direction of the interest of justice, in the direction of the public interest, which the Office of the Attorney General has indeed labored to ensure at the end of the day that the federal government is supported in avoiding the liability arising from engagements that has been established, one, by Algon, two, by Governors Forum, and in respect of which no attempt was being made by Algon and the Governors Forum to defend.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney General. We will take a break, but before we do that, let's hear finally, because right after the break, we should be headed to the final and last topic, that's the looted funds. Reverend Ogalo, Reverend David Ugolo, you've heard what the Attorney General said and the compositions on and on about that. My interest and then the interest of this very program is to see how these things could be resolved amicably. He has put forward, efforts being made and steps being taken to resolve this issue. What other thing would you add briefly, maybe in 60 seconds or so? Could the minister and the ministry and the federal government do, and the states and the local governments and of course the consultants doing, what I'd say to it that these things don't go beyond proportion?
First, I want to thank the Attorney General for, again, this is democracy in the working. And I also want to thank the NTA management. This is really a huge opportunity for Nigerians to see how. And there's a local parable in our parlance that when two friends claim that they are friends, you only know whether they are friends when money come. And when money come, how they share the money will tell you whether they are really friends. So what has happened is that the fat payment has caused this problem. You can see the collusion between the NGF, the Nigerian Governors Forum, AGON, in an attempt to help a private company to make money out of Nigerians. And so any settlement that do not take the interests of Nigerians into consideration will not stand. Even after this administration, this Paris Club, if not properly handled, it will haunt all the stakeholders. And so as a civil society activist, what I will advocate and call for is that I appeal to my good friend, Malami, the Attorney General, that this 1 hour is not enough to tell Nigerians what has happened. The website of the Attorney General, the Ministry of Justice, is a platform Nigerians go. It will be good for Nigerians to know all those documents that the Attorney General have displayed to Nigerians today. It should be uploaded to the website. Let Nigerians continue the conversation. NGF will come to equity. Agon, even the private company, because one of the first steps we will take as civil society, we are very interested in this case, the people of Nigerians, they have to be involved in the conversation. It's not a decision that Agon and NGF and the Ministry of Justice can resolve. Because like Attorney General alluded to the issue of impunity, the executive arms of government cannot take decision alone when it comes to issue of money. There are due process. If the chairman of a local government writes a letter that borders on issue of resources and the legislative arm is not carried along, then the NGF in Abuja cannot speak on behalf of any state when the House of Assembly of that state has not appropriated appropriately. So the issue is bigger than this. Even the court, where some of these judgments are entered into, as time proceeds, the people of Nigeria will begin to appear in those courts. So that we begin to demand that this culture of impunity will end. So it's not an issue that these few people can discuss and end. So the first thing is to have access to information. With access to information, people will be able to contribute to the debate. And it's now, and I'm happy that the Attorney General have come forward to tell Nigerians what the situation is. It is now the responsibility of Nigerians to take this forward. And not just Nigerians, the president of the country, President Buhari, has the responsibility to call for an independent investigation so that Nigerians can be properly appreciate what has happened so far. Because $1 million, $2 million, we are talking about $3 billion in the face of the challenge. As we speak now, Nigerian debt is piling up.
Thank you, Reverend Ugolo. Thank you. Children. Thank you. Let's pause you for a while. Just a final wrap up on this topic before we delve into the recovered loots. Honorable Minister of Justice, the President, as we have read, has said the further deductions should be halted. What going forward, what is going to happen to that? And has the Paris Club proceedings, is it still available?
Well,
or have you exhausted it?
First, let me state for the record, I think it's important that the Paris Club claim or contention that we are discussing here this morning was indeed on the basis of a judgment in 2023. and early 2025 before
2003.
2013.
Okay, 2013.
Yeah, 2013 and indeed 2015 before the coming in place of government of President Muhammadu Buhari. So for the record, it is important to state clearly that it was indeed inherited issue that started in 2011 with the engagement of the consultants by Algon and the subsequent issues that boils down to a consent judgment in 2013 in respect of which the governors, that is the governors forum and indeed Algon, were commonly in agreement as it relates to the consent judgment. It was not a liability that was occasioned by the government of President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, when these contentions now, taking into consideration the subsequent events, going forth and back and forth over it, set in, we have taken a decision as a government that let us deliberate on these issues before the Federal Executive Council. And then a memo was presented relating to the Paris Club and incidental judgments, high-profile judgments that have been incurred over time, substantially and mostly before coming in place of the government of President Muhammadu Buhari, and then a council memo was presented. It was deliberated upon. Arising from the transparency and accountability of government of President Muhammadu Buhari, it was eventually decided that the memo relating to this should be stepped down, and then a cabinet committee
the memo relating to the
deductions on Paris Club and high-profile inherited judgment debt be stepped down to allow for the formation of a cabinet committee under the chairmanship of the vice president, so that the parties can now be brought to the table to deliberate on it out of desire for transparency and accountability. And this time, not exclusively with the judicial consideration in mind, but indeed extended executive consideration and the associated incidental parties of interest. And that is where we are. The memo relating to the deductions has been placed on table before the Federal Executive Council. The Federal Executive Council deliberated upon it, and on the advice of the Attorney General, for that matter, for the record, the memo was stepped down, and then a cabinet committee was put in place by President Muhammadu Buhari under the chairmanship of the vice president to look into the matters with a view to inviting the Algon, with a view to inviting the Governors Forum, and indeed other ministries, departments, and agencies of government of interest to table to look into it objectively and to look into the justiciability of it and take a decision.
Is there a timeline to that?
Well, no timeline has been fixed, but then, as you rightly know, this government has, limited time to wind off, and I believe it will be as quickly as possible. It will be done as quickly as possible. It is an inherited problem, and it is a problem that we are addressing. We are trying as a government of the day to address.
Just like Reverend Ogolo said, this thing needs to be brought to the public domain so that lots of Nigerians should really get to know. We here too really want to get to know. That's why I'm asking about the timeline. We'll come back here much again and then talk about these issues and how they have been resolved, especially with the local government Algon, that is, and then the Governors Forum to being part of the conversation. It's unfortunate that we couldn't get any one of them this morning, but I think in our next tradition we will do that. It's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll look at the looted funds in a moment. Stay with us.
The ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer-long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha Bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger Bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
Do you run a breast or cervical cancer service? Are you a private or public laboratory, clinic or hospital that offer any of breast imaging, cervical cancer screening, HPV vaccination, or other breast or cervical cancer services? Is your service a primary, secondary, or tertiary center located in any part of Nigeria, no matter how remotely located it is? If yes to any of these questions, then subscribe to the OCI Foundation's Savvy Breast app and become accessible and visible to millions of Nigerians. It is all for free. To subscribe, just type the Savvy Breast application form on Google or go to the OCI Foundation's page on www.ocifoundation.org and search for Savvy Breast application form. Complete the form and submit, and let millions of Nigerians patronize you, all for free. Become part of the OCI Foundation's quest to tackle breast and cervical cancers in Nigeria, and join us to rise by lifting others.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Oh, well, we'll be talking about the looted funds in the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, and I think we've got that limited time to talk about such a huge and a very big topic here. But all the same, let's just get started and then see what justice we can make to that. And then, Minister Malemi, the looted funds or the recovered looted funds have been a bone of contention in this country. And when this administration came on board, it had fighting corruption as one of its cardinal principles to pursue. And then we've seen a lot being done in that direction and in that regard. However, Nigerians are still maybe in the dark, if I may use the phrase, about how much was looted, how much was used, where is the remaining, and what are we going to do? So many talks have been going about on this issue. Could you just maybe in 120 seconds give us the background as to what was, recovered, and then so far, how far?
Well, let me begin by way of addressing your first question as to how much is looted. That is a question that cannot have a precise, direct, and positive answer. Again, the background of the fact that what has been looted has constituted a subject of investigation over time.
Since then?
And ever since, day in, day out, traces have been made and recoveries have been made.
Okay.
So again, the background of the continuity of the investigation process in terms of tracing the looted assets, it is not a question that I can say with precision. But then coming down to the issue of recovered loots, how much was recovered, I think is an area in which I can give some level of insight.
Okay.
First, as you can very well, I believe, recall, the first major recovery made by the federal government was the $322 million recovered from Switzerland. And that money, by the common understanding of the parties, inclusive of the island of Jersey, the UK, the US, which were indeed the jurisdiction through which those recovered loads passed through. The parties came to terms and agreed that the amount should be a kind of deployed in addressing poverty that characterized the polity as at 2015 when President Muhammadu Buhari came on board. And that recovery was indeed effected in 2017.
Okay.
And it was the money that was deployed on major social intervention programs. Interventions like N-Power, interventions like trader money, interventions like school feeding program, and a host of other interventions that were targeted at the poor segment of the Nigerian society. So our reputation as a nation, arising from commitment associated with the deployment of recovered asset, was internationally acknowledged with that in mind, and our further efforts to make further recovery, which was the $311 million, was as a result enhanced. We succeeded subsequently in recovering additional $311 million from US, which amount by the international understanding of the parties was to be deployed in the infrastructural development of Nigeria. I am happy to report that that money was what was being deployed, what was being utilized in the execution of the major infrastructural projects in Nigeria, inclusive of the second Niger Bridge, which has reached an advanced stage of completion, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and then Abuja-Kano Expressway, among others. So these were the major recoveries made. But then there were a host of other recoveries made. Of recent, in the first 18 months, we have equally recovered, I think, around 6 million euros, among others. And then we kept recovering locally and internationally. The statistics is very difficult for me to capture, taking into consideration the figures involved, but then the true position of things, our efforts in terms of recoveries of looted assets had proven to be a successful one. But the issue of interest, I think, is not only about the recovery in its own right, but what is it that we have equally done in terms of making efforts to save the federal government the embarrassment of execution of the judgments that to our minds are fraudulent, among others. Of particular interest, which constitutes an establishment of the position of the office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, is the fact that as at the time we came in place on board, there was a judgment relating to P and ID case, which runs to around $10 billion. And we have succeeded in trying as much as possible to avoid liability in terms of ensuring that the no enforcement against the asset of the federal government is occasioned. And we have, been the first country ever in the world succeeded in not only the stopping the enforcement of that judgment, but indeed contesting it and given an opportunity to raise issues that are targeted at setting the judgment aside. So what I'm saying, in essence, we are not working only in terms of recovery, but we are working in terms of avoidance of liability against the interests of the federal government in multiple of cases. Okay, let me bring in Reverend David Ogolo, who has been keeping an eye on how these recovered loots, have been deployed. Reverend, you have been following the money, the looted, recovered loots. So far, we've heard of the minister has told us of pounds. He has also told us about dollars, and I'm sure there is also the real, which he talked about. All our monies that have been recovered, But how have these monies benefited us, the public? Can you tell us, if you know?
First, again, I want to thank the NTA and also thank the Attorney General. I know that the Attorney General will recall that in the instance of the Abuja, which is the $325.5 million, he was the one who signed the agreement with the Swiss and the World Bank in Washington in 2017. And in that MOU reached with the federal government, there was an express provisions that make references to the need for civil society to be incorporated. to ensure that the issue of monitoring comes to prevail. But just to give you a background before the Abacha coup, there was $700 million that was returned to Nigeria before the President Buhari administration. And you know, we also came out with a report when we monitored that first instance that came to Nigeria. There were schools that were claimed that then Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was the finance minister, that they used the money to build. And some of us went to those schools were not in existence. And roads that were built with those money, some of those roads were not there. So it was against the background of that lack of transparency and accountability in the first transfer of the Abacha's money from Switzerland that I think informed why the Swiss government, through their court ruling, they decided that they need to now put eye on how money returned back to Nigeria is used. And I'm happy that the Attorney General led the federal government delegation to Washington, where about 4 countries came together under the GIFA, and they came out with the principle, and then the Abacha coup was signed. And the Attorney General also gave us support in Nigeria, civil society. He made it possible for us to work closely with the National Cash Transfer Office. For the first time in history, first time, I repeat, and as an expert on asset recovery, not just an expert of over 30 years, my master's degree in the University of Sussex was majored on asset management. It is only in Nigeria that civil society have an access to information as to how recovered asset is being used in the country. My colleagues in other countries, they hardly have this information. And so in Abacha coup, when you compare it to Abacha 1, the difference is clear. The money was purely used for cash transfer program for the poorest of the poorest in Nigeria. Over 1.9 million poor Nigerians. I can confirm, having monitored this process for the last 2 years, that the money, 5,000 naira going to poor people in Nigeria, the first time in Africa and in the world that you see that recovered money is going to the victim. Poor Nigerians across the country benefited, which is still ongoing, and that the Abacha money was given to poor people, 5,000 naira. You know, sometimes people sit down in Abuja and say, what is 5,000 naira? But I've seen poor people who never had an access to this kind of money before. Consistently for over a year, 2 years, they were receiving this money. It enabled them to buy their medicine. It enabled them to enter into cooperative society to do trading. And as we speak today, Abacha too has been adjudged as a gold standard by officials of the US government. Because when you see how the Nigerian government have provided a framework that enabled civil society to monitor the entire process, you have every reason to say that there have been a little improvement, and 1.9 million Nigerians, and they were not selected by and picked by politicians. It was through a scientific process designed by the World Bank in collaboration with the Nigerian government that the social register was designed in Nigeria, where those who were selected across the country benefited from this Abacha. So the first time our campaign, we can say that poor people benefited for the return of Nigerian money to the country. So in Abacha 3, which is the last one that the minister mentioned of the 3 major infrastructure, you know, this happened because many Nigerians came to the understanding that, why do you share the money? Let's use it for a major project. So I think Buhari responded by making sure that encouraged the Attorney General and his people in the Ministry of Justice. And so they decided to pull the Abacha 3, which is the $311 million, into major project, which is the Kano, the Second Bridge, the Niger Bridge, and the Lagos-Ibadan Road, which is currently ongoing. At least Nigerians can also say, for the first time in history, that the money recovered on Abacha 3 is going to 3 major roads. And that process is ongoing, which we are keeping our eye also on it.
Reverend Ugolo, thank you. Let's have a final contribution from the Honorable Minister. In just, if you can, for us, it would be grateful in less than 60 seconds. The forfeited assets, I mean, what is happening to them?
Well, the forfeited assets, what we try to do is to institutionalize the process. Before now, there has never been in existence any institutionalized process of dealing, management, and indeed disposal of the recovered assets. Now we have in place a Process of Crime Act 2022, which has now provided the legislative framework as a starting point. And then we have equally put in place before then an interministerial committee which involve almost all the agencies of government that are in one way or the other responsible for the recovery of assets, or perhaps giving professional opinion as to how best things can be done, inclusive of the assets valuation unit of the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, and among others, indeed the DPR for the purpose of measuring the oil asset, among others, which has indeed worked wonderfully well. Among the recovered assets, some institutions of government which were started with have benefited there from open payment of a consideration as valued and assessed. So what I'm saying in essence, the issue of the disposal of recovered assets is ongoing and is going on wonderfully well. But arising from the innovations introduced by the Process of Crime Act of recent, those assets that have been profiled over time by different ministries, departments, and agencies of government are returned back to them for the purpose of disposing, establishing a directorate in their respective units, and then ensuring that the proceeds are realized in line with the regulations provided.
Honorable Minister of Justice, Honorable Minister of Justice, we've just scratched the surface of this conversation.
Thank you.
And you can rest assured that we'll invite you just very soon, sooner than expect, for a part 2 of it. The use of deployment of looted funds. Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malame, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's also appreciate Reverend David Ugala, Executive Director, African Network for Environmental and Economic Justice. We'd like to thank you for all the perspectives that you have put up. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, and that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Do join us again. That's tomorrow for another edition. I am Claire Adilabo Abdul Razak. Always remember, take action against rape and rapists.
And I'm Yusuf Nadabus. See you again tomorrow.
The day, 7 days a week. You can watch NTA International live on your TV, computer, iPad, tablet, and phone.